Hello, my name is Diane, and today I want to talk about some of the books coming out in June that I'm most interested in. I have two standalone novels, a graphic novel, a prequel, and two sequels to talk about. We're just going to get right into it, starting with the standalone novels. First coming out on June 4th is In the Hour of Crows by Dana Elmendorf. The story takes place in a small town where people are very superstitious, and our main character, Weatherly, is a death talker. She has the ability to talk death out of someone, but she can only do this to them once, never a second time. The people in her town really like her around when they need her, but the rest of the time they don't want her around. They're very suspicious of this mysterious death-related ability that she has. She also has a cousin who is gifted as a scryer and can see the future reflected in dark surfaces. This cousin, Adair, is killed in an accident. However, Weatherly knows that Adair saw something very unnerving right before this accident, and Weatherly believes that this was not an accident at all, it was murder. Following this, things are made even more difficult when Weatherly, for the first time, is unable to talk the death out of the mayor's son, and the people in the town believe that this was intentional. It wasn't that she couldn't do it, it was that she wouldn't. So now we follow Weatherly trying to figure out what actually happened to Adair, following whatever clues she can find, and figuring out why this happened to her, why she was unable to, for the first time, use her ability, and with very little help from the people around her, as the people in the village already are very put off by her and her abilities, but now they are suspicious of her for not being able to save the mayor's son. I think this sounds like an interesting mystery set in a small town. Sounds like we're going to have a pretty closed setting and small cast of characters. The magic in this, well, doesn't sound like anything too new and unusual. It still sounds very interesting and unique. And I'll be interested to see if Weatherly can solve this mystery, if she can get anyone else to trust her and help her, and why someone would actually be out to get Adair. Then coming out on June 18th is The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands by Sarah Brooks. This is a historical fantasy that takes place on the Trans-Siberian Express train, and it is famous for being both luxurious and dangerous, as it takes passengers through the wastelands where they are hoping to catch sight of some of the interesting but very dangerous creatures that live there. On the last trip that the train took, something terrible happened, although nobody remembers what happened, even one of our main characters who has lived her entire life on this train. We follow a small group of characters. One of them is a woman who is grieving and using a false name, a naturalist who is trying to redeem his reputation, and also a stowaway who has some sort of connection to the wastelands. And we find that the wastelands may be changing in some way, and with this next trip that the train is taking, there might also be a danger to this new group of passengers. Sounds like there's going to be some tension and suspicion amongst the passengers between each other, and also dangers presented from the wastelands that they're passing through, whether or not their train is actually going to make it and they're all going to survive, or if something terrible is going to happen, like the last trip the train went on. I don't see very many stories taking place on trains, especially fantasy stories. There just aren't a lot of trains in general in those. And there's certainly a lot of mystery surrounding this, that we know that something terrible happened, but nobody remembers what happened. And there aren't a lot of details given in the synopsis, which may be for the best. Stories like this, sometimes it's better to go in not knowing a lot and figure things out along with your characters. So I would be interested to figure out what's going on, figure out who may have something to do with what's going on, if anyone, and also learn a bit more about this wasteland and the creatures within it and what about it is actually changing. Sounds like it should be an interesting story. Then the graphic novel coming out on June 11th is The Last Delivery by Evan Dom. This follows a parcel delivery boy who is delivering his last package to a sprawling mansion, and he needs to find the resident inside who has to sign for it personally. However, there is this endless chaotic party going on, and they are getting in the way of our delivery boy trying to find the resident. Our delivery boy has to make his way further and further into this labyrinthine mansion, trying to find this resident. This seemingly simple task proves to be much more complicated than it should have been, and we go along with our delivery boy as he's trying to make his way through this house, trying to just deliver this package and overcome all of the obstacles that end up getting in his way. Sounds a little silly, kind of a simple premise, but it also sounds pretty foreboding that there are so many things getting between the delivery boy and the resident, getting this package delivered, which should be very easy because he's in the house. And I just think it sounds interesting going along on this strange journey and trying to figure out who this resident is, why he's so hard to get to, and what this package is, if it's even anything important. Hopefully it is if the delivery boy is going through all of this trouble, but we'll have to read it to see. Coming out on June 25th is The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlman. This is a prequel story to The Black-Tongued Thief, which came out 3 years ago. I read that shortly after it came out, and I don't remember too many details at this point, to be honest, but I do remember enjoying reading it. I had a good time with the story. It had a lot of action in it, and I overall enjoyed the writing, so I'm interested to get back into this world. I know we're probably not going to get a sequel for a little while longer, but I think it would be interesting to learn a bit more about one of our main characters in this prequel and see what her life was before we met her in The Black-Tongued Thief. The Daughter's War follows Galva as she joins the army in this new unit, the Raven Knights, where they march alongside these magical birds that have been crafted with dark magic. So the knights with these corvids are marching toward a city that has been overtaken by goblins, and they are trying to reclaim it from the goblin horde and hopefully stop the goblin horde, or at least make some dent into their numbers. Sounds like it's going to be a very action-packed story, probably a pretty bloody one, with this ongoing war between humans and goblins. I'm interested to learn more about this character and get back into this world, and hopefully it'll also be a good time. We know Galva's gonna survive this war somehow, but I'll be interested to learn about what she actually went through and what she has to overcome to be able to make it out, and if they get to take this city back. Then for sequels, coming out on June 11th is The Fire Within Them by Matthew Ward. This is the sequel to The Darkness Before Them that came out last fall. I admittedly still haven't finished reading that. I've had it since before it came out, and I just have not prioritized it. I feel bad about it, but there it is. I'm still very interested in this series, in this world. I did read the beginning of it, and I was enjoying the writing. I have no excuse for not having read it, but I am excited to also have a sequel to maybe get me going on that first book and finally finish it. This is a fantasy series set in a world ruled by an immortal king. The magic is fueled by souls, and the land is being threatened by this supernatural mist called the Veil. In the first book, we follow Kat, who is a thief who is pursuing one big score to settle her debt. Unfortunately, in this world, a lot of the vaults and valuable things are guarded by spirits. Kat, however, has the ability to speak to these spirits, which gives her a bit of an advantage. But with a rebellion coming and the war beginning to divide this world, Kat seeking freedom isn't going to be quite as simple as just paying off of her debt. And in the sequel, we now have the rebellion in full swing. The land is divided, and Kat has learned and is going to learn more things about her past and her family that are going to greatly affect her life. The series just has a lot of things that I particularly like in fantasy. I like a rebellion. I like a thief character. I think the magic sounds like it's going to be interesting. And maybe with the second book coming out, I'll finally prioritize reading that first book, because I am still very interested in this story. And the last book I have to talk about, which is one of my most anticipated releases of the year, coming out on June 25th, is Echo of Worlds by M.R. Carey. This is the sequel to Infinity Gate that came out last year. The first book is the first half of the story. This is a duology, and we follow three main characters as their lives eventually intertwine. Our three main characters all live on different versions of Earth that are connected in some way. I don't want to explain too much of it because it's a big part of the plot of the story, but there is an AI that eventually develops throughout the main character's story, and the three main characters find themselves together by the end of that story. And that is really the beginning of how they all got involved in what's going on and how they all came to be together. And that's going to continue right on into this second book. I really enjoyed that book. I really enjoyed the writing, and I thought the story was very interesting. I liked following the different characters, even though there is a bit of a shift in the story as you go from one to the next, because it doesn't alternate between them. It does go from one to the next and then the next. This book, I'm assuming, is going to alternate between them because they are now all together, but we'll see. The story started off pretty close to reality, at least a somewhat believable version of Earth, and then we learn about these other versions of Earth that are even farther off from the world that we live in. And I think it's very interesting to have those infinite possibilities for a setting that are all still connected and tied together. And in this, there is an even bigger picture of what's going on and what could potentially destroy all of that. And I just found it to be a very engaging story, the way that it was written and the way that things progress. So I'm very excited to see what actually happens to our main characters, what happened with that AI that we saw develop at different points in the first book, and how it's all going to tie together. I don't really know specifically what to expect, and I honestly don't care. I'm just interested after reading that first book to continue on with the story and see where it all goes. So those are all of the books that come out in June that I'm most looking forward to. Let me know if you're looking forward to any of these, or if there's anything I didn't talk about that you're most excited about. Otherwise, that's all for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.